your aid. Now, I did not get a reply from these couple of students, but I mean, what they were, I mean, quite frankly, they're Arabs. And they feel like that that part of the world is in unrest, that it's okay to kill people who do not convert to Islam. And it's okay especially to kill people who are Muslim and who convert out of Muslim to another religion. And they say, we don't want you Americans coming in and telling us that this is wrong.
I mean, every country says that, you know, that they don't want the United States to go in there and do something, but I mean, the United States is basically the solution to the problem. And
in a lot of cases. But in this case, see, we were suffering from what was called the Vietnam Syndrome. We had tried to help the South Vietnamese and failed. So when we've learned that Pol Pot was killing many of his own people, what did we do? I mean, Henry Kissinger was Secretary of State. They're just engaging in a big slaughterhouse down there, which if we'd still been in Vietnam, we might have regretted. This was after we'd been whipped and left Vietnam. And of all people, the wicked Vietnamese government who we could not whip, they came in and they took care of Pol Pot. The United Nations didn't do it, CETO didn't do it, ASEAN didn't do it. Vietnam. They rescued the people of Cambodia. And again, I have to hand it to the Vietnamese. I mean, they did something that we weren't going to do.
But isn't it because they know their own country? I mean... Well,
Cambodia's next door. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned it. They know their own country. They know the people next door.
The U.S. just went in. They don't know what's going on because they didn't study the demographics. I mean, because when you go to a new country, obviously you're not going to know what's going to happen. You don't know the culture, you don't know the language, you don't know anything. So you have to be prepared for that.
That is a big problem that the even American Christian missionaries go there and flop a lot of times, but they don't understand their. And John Kennedy got up a program called Peace Corps, where we'd send our young people in to try to live among these people and educate them and train them in the ways of Americans and convince them they can do better. And what local people say, Peace Corps, go home. Peace Corps, go home. We don't want you over here. We want to live our old way just like we have to. Again, you have to learn the language and the customs.
I mean, I feel like the only reason why these countries don't accept us going in and helping is because of the fact that they feel like they're going to be like a lesser, like people say second-class citizen or something in their own country.
That we're going to come in and say, we know what you need and we're top, and we're going to just trample over their own customs.
Well, to piggyback on that, actually, I just feel like they don't want the U.S. to interrupt what they're doing because they don't want their culture to be vanished. Because America obviously wants to westernize probably the whole world, and that's what they're doing in Afghanistan. And obviously, the people in Afghanistan, they have their own culture going on, and they're very stubborn about not wanting to let their culture or their customs.
The way they live.
I don't think they want to. I don't think the U.S. wants to westernize anybody else. I just feel like, you know what I'm saying. They want them to open up to broaden the way they think. You know what I'm saying? Like, instead of just thinking one way, things go one way. You know what I'm saying? Or religion has, we're Muslim, we're die-hard Muslim, so this is the way the Quran says we have to live, and this is it, and that's it, and that's the only way. Women can have a right to learn, they can go to school, they can be equal to a man, they can...
You're hitting right, a lot of it is women. With the Muslim world, I mean, I think I told you guys, the Muslim world are afraid of Western ideals concerning women. I mean, to them, women are property. And then the Western world comes on that women should have the freedom to make their own, even the right to divorce their husbands, should have the right to own property, should have the right to an education, should have the right to go out and earn a living, and should be able to not have children who don't want it. And a Muslim, that's anathema. Yeah, in other words, a lot of it has to do with, and that's true of the Asian countries.
Just like how you going to say what God said.
Well, again, a lot of it's religion. There's certain things about Western religion, political correctness. Well, I tell you, political correctness goes at odds with every one of the world's religions in some area or another, whether it be Christianity or Islam, or in one form or another. There's something about political correctness that's at odds with all of the world's religions. And we come in and we tell them, hey, we know how you should live. But wait a minute, what about the way you people are living? We don't want to copy a lot of what we see about you. I mean, Well, right now in the United States, half the adult population is unmarried, and more than half the marriage is now in divorce. And the Asian people, I mean, they don't have that problem. And also, there's, again, lawlessness. We tolerate gangs going around and taking over neighborhoods and destroying property of anybody who crosses them up. We tolerate it. Maybe you younger folk haven't run into it yet, but you...
There are consequences, though.
There are consequences?
Yes, you know.
I don't know, well, there
You can't just
eventually
go
are
into,
consequences.
You know, mess up a neighborhood and think nothing's going to happen, think there's going to be no, you know, ramifications to your actions, you know?
There eventually will be some harm, I mean, some consequences, yes.
I mean, and then if you
But
would
one
like
of the
to be
consequences
that-
might be that the people of America will get tired of this lawlessness and start demanding law. Socrates told us 2,300 years ago, give people too much freedom and they start demanding that freedom be curtailed.
Wouldn't it be the government? I mean,
What's
it
that?
depends if the government wants to take action into it. Sometimes people would want to pass laws and then our Senate would be like, oh, I don't want to pass that, or I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Like, some people put in too much money into wanting to do one thing instead of the other. Like, say, same-sex marriage, people
Yeah.
don't, like, instead of looking at other points of view, people are, like, pouring money into wanting not people to get married of the same sex when you can use that money for something completely different. Like, I'm just saying, like,
That is one thing that has turned a lot of the people in some of these countries hard against us, by the way. That very issue, I mean, the issue you named, because some countries in the world just say, hey, this is anathema. And Boris Yeltsin said, I'm not going to allow that in my country.
I mean, like,
But
Sharon-
see, we have a choice. We allow ourselves to be governed, you know.
I mean,
Sooner or later, we'll get tired.
You know, but they don't have no choice.
we have freedom of speech, but we,
no, we
I mean, we don't, yeah, but.
I
We
mean,
don't.
say we
have
do,
freedom
but
of
there's
speech.
Well, I wanna
legislation.
tell
You
you-
will face the consequences
We
for what you said.
saw
We
a
have
prime
freedom,
example of
technically,
freedom.
but no, we
You
don't.
can do it, but you
Let me tell you
face the
something now.
consequences.
Let me tell you-
Yeah, but
There
no,
are
there's places
freedom
where you
of
can
speech.
speak or say like, if for your freedom of speech, you have
There's
to
no
ask them,
freedom
where
of
can
speech.
we have a free speech
Yeah, we
zone where
don't.
people are not
We
gonna
do.
walk by and
There's,
say,
every time we come to the United States Constitution, go down the Bill of Rights. So this is not in America. Every time I tell these classes, there is no freedom of speech in this world. And we saw that yesterday. There's no freedom. I mean, your speech will determine whether you have friends or whether you don't, whether you get the job or whether you don't, whether you keep the job if you get it,
Yeah.
whether you don't, whether you get elected if you run for office, whether you don't. Your speech is so important, and your speech will determine whether you get married or not, whether you stay married once you get married. Believe me, you have to exercise. There is no freedom of speech, and of course we saw a prime example of that just yesterday. There hasn't been freedom of speech in this country. I mean, not that I think y'all know what I'm talking. Not that I in any way approve or condone what the man said, but you'll take the consequences of what you say.
Yeah.
Everybody.
I mean, but I feel like in that situation, I mean,
We know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, we have nobody said it out
like,
loud.
I feel like, who cares? That's his views. That's what he thinks. You know, everybody has an opinion. Everybody's entitled, and you can't act like he's just not the only one. Like he's like the first guy that, you know what I'm
but
saying?
you grew up
But
that
just
way.
like him,
Yeah.
like he make all those remarks. I can get in a room full of the most ignorant people, and they say the complete opposite about, you know what I'm saying, the
I
counter.
totally
So,
agree with you
like,
about being
so I
open-minded, but
just-
some people just don't grow up that way. Like, they
The
grow up
higher you
very
get in the totem
one-minded
pole, the more
ways.
careful you have to be. I mean, it's one thing for the college age. I mean, if some elementary school kid had said what this man said, somebody might scold him, and that would be it. But then when you get high up, the more and more and more rules you have to keep. But at the Army, I tell you, your general has to obey more rules, and he's more restricted than the private. A general can't go around to the PX and pitch a big drunk and come home and revel. I mean, come back to his barracks and wallow around and regurgitate all over the floor. I mean, no, but the privates do. I mean, I know what I'm talking about. I was in the Army once. The privates do. The general, he's more restricted. You know, you get high up, you've got to be more careful what you say.
but I think, you know, the common, to me, this is just my outlook. The main point, I feel like, that situation can be compared to anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, as
You know,
far as
I could
you're at a
easily
job,
get in trouble.
you know, and you're under a boss, and you know you feel a certain way about
I know.
you, but you're still making money.
There's not a
Like,
one of
it's
us in here
business,
who
it's
couldn't make,
strictly
without
financial.
meaning to,
Business
some
is
huge
business.
mistake like this man made. Not any one of us, and wind up losing our job, losing our family, perhaps losing everything we worked for, being sued for all we have. There's not a one of us who's immune. Not one. And all you have to do is open your mouth a little bit and say something you don't realize is being recorded. Of course, now in my case, right now I know, you know, I'm being recorded. 2 different recording devices, and maybe even more, not that I care. But see, I've had a teacher one thing about recording, but you take something somebody says out of context. Just, you know, you can take a quick, cut this and clip that, and just take what's in between, and make anybody sound really, really awful. But then if you, now what was he saying before then? What was the context? And whoops, all of a sudden it doesn't sound so bad. But Mr. Bennigan has told me that he's had people come, students with tape recorders. This is what the teacher said. Well, get back with the teacher. Oh, but it was in such and such a context.
That's why I see legal, right?
But
That's why I see legal to record somebody or something without their
well,
consent and all
it
this.
is. Well, there are laws about it. I mean, hey, all of you know
But then again,
the camcorders. My camcorder's in plain view. Okay. And oftentimes I forget that it's there.
Yeah.
Right.
So, how are you saying?
Oh, no, I was just saying that the way that people would like videotape or record people, and then they, like, you know how you said they chop it up, they just would like to create a miscommunication.
Oh,
That way
yes,
it
they
just causes
can.
a huge chaos.
It can be done.
Mhm.
It can be done. I mean, you know, hey, you may not, I chop up a lot of stuff that's goes
We'll
on
change your
here.
perspective of that.
Change your perspective. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And today, with today's digital recording, you can put a sentence here and insert it over there and rearrange your sentences and make any person sound, or insert a word, just a key word here and there, and make any person sound just awful. It takes some doing. But with today's digital recording, it's not that hard, and it's not that hard to do. All right. Anyway, Southeast Asia, your book talks about, oh yeah, ASEAN, A-S-E-A-N. These were the Southeast Asian nations getting together, among other things, to fight communism. And folks, here's what's so great about it. They didn't call the United States to help them. They decided we're going to do it ourselves, just like Indonesia did. And that's the best way. If they can do it themselves, more power to them. Get the United States involved and things wind up lousing up. They have a big problem, I mean, for everybody. I mean, they lived in their own isolated pocket of humanity for 2,000 to 3,000 years. Then all of a sudden the world starts learning about each other, and this place learns about that one. And every culture, society has areas where it comes into conflict with other cultures. Things like religious practices. I mean, if the people of India, the women of India used to, when their husband died, throw themselves on a fire and burn themselves to death. Well, the rest of the world said, hey, this is a bad religious practice. We ought to stop it. But to this day, a lot of religions allow fathers, when their daughter or their children convert to another religion, particularly their daughters, the father kills them. This still goes on in 2014. Still an issue, but again, a lot of the rest of the world will say, oh no, this is anathema. So again, but everybody has some religious practices or cultural practices that bring them in conflict with other cultures and other societies. And it doesn't look like it's going to get any better for a while.